Yo, what's going on everybody? The Cool Geek here, and I'm at another video. And today I'll be explaining what the fourth dimension is, what it means to be fourth dimensional, and what are some feats that you can perform that are fourth dimensional feats, some more rare ones. Let's get into it. So, like I was saying, in this video I'm going to be explaining the fourth dimension, what it is, and like how you can be fourth dimensional in the versus algorithm. Now, this is sort of a tie-in to my dimensional tiering and how to power scale videos, and this is a very sort of controversial topic, even in like the outside of the versus community and the scientific community in general. And I've done my fair bit of research and thought I should bring you this video, especially since I was thinking of having a video coming out soon that includes some pretty strong characters, they're good old 4D, but I think I need to give some context because my explanation for them being 4D um, would be a bit vague since I didn't want to make that video that long. I figured I'd make this video. It's not going to be too long, and then the other video, keep it fairly short. And, so, yeah. Now, if you're new to, like, what this whole dimensional talk, I highly, highly recommend you watch my dimensional tiering video and my how to power scale part 1 videos. Specifically for the parts about, like, the different ranges of 4D and yeah, I think that's pretty important. Now, here's sort of the main thing people go off of when they say like 4D and like that are actually debaters, not casuals, but I mean like if you're an actual debater, people use this a lot, right? This is from Versus Wiki, the same tiering system that I use their scans for my how to power scale part 1 video. And this right here, what this actually means is a bit contentious because it says, right, this is a character who can create or destroy an entire four-dimensional time space of a single universe, not just the physical matter within one. For example, an entire timeline. Please take note that simple statements of transcending and are overcoming space/time without any further elaboration is not enough to grant a universe level plus rating. Such statements could be flowery language or most simply refer to resistance to space-time manipulation. Now, I've had debates over like how this should be interpreted, and I've sort of brought it up as now the first thing that pops into my head, right, is it says universe-sized space-time. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, usually when people say a universe, as in the same verses wiki, when they refer to a universe, they're referring to something about the size of the observable universe, which is about 200 billion galaxies. Now, the thing about that though is I'll present a feat of say someone destroying a space-time, um for example, Kaguya's space-time. It has like a star, a planet, and a moon in it. Now people say, well, it's not universe sized, so it's not 4D. Um Not exactly. If we're going by this, right? Even though it says on here universal sized, if the thing that really stands out is it says the space time, right? We'll get into what that is in just a sec, but I want to clear this up really fast. Um, if it's the space time, if you're destroying, say, 200 billion galaxies worth of space time, or say a star's level space time, you're right. That's like a massive, insane difference, but in terms of it being 4D, it would still be 4D because even if it's now I'm pretty sure this number is way too small, but if it's even if it's a sextillion times difference, it's still less of an infinite. You'd have to prove that like destroying the space time of like a solar system is over infinitely weaker than destroying the space time of the observable universe, which you'd be hard pressed to do, and which I think would just be wrong. Like, there's no way you can assume that. Um, but here, let's sort of get into the nitty gritty of this, right? I think I've said before, like in my dimensional tiering video, that that time is the fourth dimension. Now, I've sort of had debates over this as well, and time. Now, okay, so here's the thing, right? It's generally considered the fourth dimension by most scientific experts and a lot of universities and such. But the thing about it though is it's also often debated too. Now, you might think that's sort of like an oxymoron, like how can people, like most people agree on it, but it's debated all the time. But think of it this way, by like most people agree on it, that would be like over, and pretty much anything over 50%, like 51% plus. So if like 75% of people agree on something, that would be widely agreed upon, right? Like most people agree with it, like 75%, that's three quarters, right? But at the same time, if there's one quarter, they can go and debate, each one of those people can debate three people that disagree with them. You know, they can debate five people that disagree with them, you know, as long as they debate, which a lot of people in the scientific community do debate. I won't say they're specifically debaters, but they do debate, you know, they can spot quite a few fallacies, you know, they're not terrible. So yeah, I feel like that's important to point out. And a lot of theories like M theory I brought up in my dimensional tiering video and my how to power scale part 1 videos is M theory takes into account time as the fourth dimension. But I also think it's important to explain what a dimension is. I think that's really important to get into. So yeah, all right. So a dimension is a measurable extent of some kind, right? Some examples would be like length, width, depth, or this might sound weird, but time. And you can also argue that an aspect or feature of something is a dimension. Now, that's sort of weird to say, but let me try and break it down and make it like as normie proof as possible, as non-scientist proof as possible, right? But to do that, I feel like I'm gonna need to explain like what space is and like what time is. 'Cause a lot of people have a really big, well, I won't say a lot of people, but when I was debating Striker for the second time, we sort of got into this like side topic of like like if space and like time are linked, and we sort of derailed a little bit. But if you want to see that debate, let me know in the iCard and to the top right of the screen. I'll probably have a poll. Now, warning, that debate is 5 hours. So if you don't have like 5 hours of your time, I don't know, you may or may not want to watch it still. But anyway, so the misconception that he had was that like if you have an object, it like automatically makes space, which isn't true. You have to have space to have an object in the first place, because without space an object can't exist, right? Now, here's the thing. Like no, here's the definition. You could probably read it yourself, but a continuous area or expanse which is free, unavailable, or unoccupied, right? So, like, so yeah, that's just a basic sort of thing that if there's if there's an object, then there has to be space to occupy that object. But if you don't see an object, that doesn't mean that there isn't space, right? If you were to look into like a void, um, if you were to say try to throw a pin into the void, if it works and it just kind of like floats there, then there's space. But if it doesn't even like go in, I don't know how you'd even like interact with this void. But let's act for a second under the axiom that you can sort of see this void and like interact with it. It wouldn't even be able to hold an object because it has no space. So yeah, I think that's important to note. Now, right off the heels of that is time, right? What exactly is time? Because most people can't define time without saying time in the definition. So the I time is the in infinite continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future as a whole, right? So this is sort of weird because I said you can like measure time, which you can. I mean, have you ever had a stopwatch? So like if you have had a stopwatch, you can measure, okay, it takes me, this amount of time to do this or that. Just like you can measure, okay, well, it takes me this amount of length to go from here to the 99-cent store, right? So you can measure things, right? So if you can measure it, it's a dimension. Now that sort of begs the question then, well, is time the fourth dimension or not? Now, that sort of depends on how you sort of define dimension, but real quick, um let me uh let me sort of get this out here though. Um so like it says in the dimension, right? It's the continued existence of something. Uh so even if there's like so okay here. Space is an area, right? It's unoccupied. But if space exists, time has to as well. Because space is something, right? It's it's the construct of the universe. So if something exists over a period, time is there by default, right? If space exist, time is literally just something existing, and space would be considered something. So time has to exist in space because space like you have if you have space and it exists, you have time because time is existing over a period. If you don't have time, which in this case would just be space existing over a period, you can't have space. Like how can you have space without space existing? Because time is there by necessity. It's if space exists, time is there by default. Like time is literally the space existing. So you can't have space without space existing. That's I I don't know. Like that's not you can't have that unless you're some like weird fictional character with like god powers or something, or I don't know, maybe like Zeus comes somewhere and like creates space without space existing. I don't know. Anyway, freaking let me not get into that, but unless you have a character in fiction that specifically is like, yeah, I created a space without time, or yeah, there's this like realm that has space but no time. Unless that's directly stated, you shouldn't assume that there's no time. Um and you should also assume Occam's razor that unless it's directly stated, that you cannot have space without time. That should be your base assumption because again, time is just space existing, so you can't have space without space existing unless it's directly stated by like a credible character and it's not like this weird outlier, right? Now, that being said, so now that we got out of the way that time and space are linked, now time would be a temporal dimension if you, because like I'm gonna try and help you like wrap your head around that, right? So time is a temporal dimension. It's not a spatial dimension. Now, the thing about this, right, is like I said, it's sort of something that has to exist by necessity, but now here, let me just read you this definition, and before you yell at me, oh, you're using Wikipedia, this video sucks, oh my gosh, I'm clicking off, like, just chill, this is the most normie-proof definition. I fact-checked it, don't worry, it's fine. But, here, let me just read it to you real quick. A temporal dimension is a dimension of time, or something like time. A temporal dimension is one way to measure physical change. It is perceived differently from the three spatial dimensions, and that there is only one of it that we know of, and that we cannot move freely in time, but subjectively move on in one direction, unless you have immeasurable speed. But anyway, so yeah, basically, here's the thing, because I know a lot of people were gonna say like, oh well, you can't like move through time. Um, I mean, watch a clock for like 2 minutes straight. You just went into the future 2 minutes. Like, like I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, a lot of people don't think about it, but if you really think about it, which a lot of people don't, you're moving through time by literally just sitting there doing almost nothing. I mean, you're breathing, so you're doing something, but like you're not really doing anything on purpose. So Like when you're sleeping, you're not trying to do anything, but you're moving forward in time. I mean, go to sleep at night and it's day the next morning. Time passed. So you do move forward in time, but most people that I know of anyway don't move backward in time. I don't know, there might be time machines in the future. Some people time traveling back, but that's not what the video is about. So yeah, so time is a temporal dimension. That's sort of how that works. Now you can have higher temporal dimensions that are sort of like time, but not exactly. And it's really sort of complicated. I might make a video in the future of like what these other temporal dimensions would like do, uh, and like how you could sort of identify them, so to speak. Now, I think now I hear you thinking. So, now I think I need to answer the $1,000,000 question, right? Is time the fourth dimension? Now, the answer is yes, and also no. Now, what I mean by that is, what do you think, like, what to you is the fourth dimension? Do you mean like a spatial dimension or a dimension in total? Or do you mean like, is someone who destroys a 4D space-time, like the space-time of like the third dimension, do you mean like if someone who does that are they fourth dimensional? Now, let me sort of break all of those bit by bit. Is it like the fourth dimension, like in total? No. Like spatial dimension? Like, is it like the fourth like spatial dimension? No, because it's a temporal dimension, right? Now, is someone who destroys a space time 4D? Yes. If they destroy like our universe and the space time, they're 4D. Now, let me sort of elaborate on that, right? So you don't have to if you destroy like a dimensional object, a dimensional construct, who specifically said it had to be a spatial dimension? Even in like almost anywhere you look, right? If you look through like the meta that we use, if you go to Versus Wiki, they never specifically state that to be a dimensional tier higher, it has to be a spatial dimension. That's never stated anywhere. And if you look at it more critically, right? If time is just something existing over a period, that can be, if you destroy the space time of an object, and like it says in the definition, time basically goes on forever. So if you go like destroy the space time, that sort of has a similar effect to like destroying something that has like a higher spatial dimension, right? Because think of it this way, right? If you have something that's, for instance, a 3D object that has length, width, and depth, it has mass by necessity, right? Versus like a 2D being who has length and width. Now, the force equation is force equals mass times acceleration. Now, the thing about that is, if you're only 2D, you don't have mass, so you'd be infinitely weaker than someone who has mass, right? Because force equals mass times acceleration. So we'd completely one-shot a 2D being. But here's the sort of like thing about time, is just like a 2D being couldn't like, they couldn't even like touch us almost. So just the same way as like we can't touch the fabric of the universe, I think that's sort of a good comparison, right? So unless you're like 4D, you can't exactly blast a hole in space-time, if you know what I mean. um and So that's sort of a good distinction I think needs to be made. And just keep in mind, dude, like times, like I said, since it goes on forever, it's at least an infinite amount above like just a planet per se. Because like, say there's like a planet, right? And it's just like a like for Earth per se. Let's say we're in a different universe, right? Um, and then there's a planet that's identical to Earth. It's basically Earth. Now, if you destroy just the planet, right? You're just breaking a 3D construct. Now, let's say you're Kaguya, and you're gonna destroy the space-time, like around your planet, like the planet and the space-time that it takes up, right? Now, If you were to do that, you'd be destroying that planet in the past, present, future, throughout, like, all of the past, present, and future, which you'd be destroying the planet and anything that were to take its place, right? Because you're destroying its location in, like, space and time. So if you were to do that, it would be at least an infinite number of, like, that planet gone, sort of. So I think that's a good distinction to make. Whereas if you're just destroying, like, the physical matter of the planet, because it's gonna die, but it's only gonna be dead now, and you're only destroying it now. So you can actually make the argument that any, like, 4D character has the sort of, you can, like, unironically make the argument that if a 4D person punches you, they're punching you now, like, in the present, in the future, and in the past. So you can literally make the argument they're punching every version of you ever with their, like, raw strength. Not saying that's a good argument. I don't want to get into that debate, but yeah, you can make the argument. But so yeah, so even if they're not punching you, like, now and then, they're having a force to essentially do that, right? Um so I think that's a really good thing, and stuff. So you can also make the argument that being 4D would make you inaccessible speed, especially, like, depending on the way you define 4D. Now, is time the fourth dimension? Like, is there a dimension of, like, time, like, beyond the, like, the 3D or something? Not exactly. Some people have a misconception of, like, what that actually means. There's not this realm that's, like, completely empty with only time. That's sort of weird. I don't know why people think that, but I don't fault them for it. But the thing is, though, uh like, if now I've talked to some people, and I've had one of my someone, like, I've had people that I like, randoms, and then I've had people I'm chill with. I specifically remember Gimbal, this guy I debated once. He's really cool. Um, he said that the fourth dimension is space without time, and I sort of agree with that. Now, let me sort of explain what I mean before I get attacked. So a 4D universe, like, say if there's a higher universe and all the beings in it are, like, 4D, you can make the argument that the universe itself has no time, which I already said it's sort of impossible, but here's the sort of explanation behind that, right? What makes this universe a 4D universe is, I brought this up sort of in my dimensional tiering video, is to be 4D, you have to have four dimensions to you, not to your universe. So in this instance, um, and I've also brought this up on why like, a third dimensional person would die in the fourth dimension. If you don't have your own time, you just be, like, stuck there. So, like I said, if you're a 4D being, you'd have length, width, depth, and your own time. Because we here in the third dimension don't have our own time. Like I said, if you have, like, a object, it doesn't magically make space and time. Like, that's not how it works. So in the fourth dimension, it would be the opposite. A new being does make space-time, scientifically, though. Um, so it's sort of a weird way to look at it, but but I don't want to make this video too long, so I just want to get at a few other things before I end this off. So if you just now you can be fourth dimensional in a bunch of different ways, because if you have, like, a fictional verse that says it has an object that's, like, 4D, but it has, like, four spatial dimensions but no temporal dimensions, that would be 4D. I mean, they're destroying a four-dimensional object. But if you have another character from another verse that can destroy, like, a 4D space-time, they should be relative. Now, that's sort of like, if you compare, like, a 2D being that has length and width, and a 2D being that has, like, width and depth. They're both two dimensions. They only have two dimensions to them. They're just different dimensions. Now, I don't like. There's no reason that it shouldn't matter. Like that. It has some sort of, like, weird ultra different property. It's still just a different, like, way for things to exist, right? So and that's why, like, when I debate, I can make an argument that any 4D character would be inaccessible speed, and that were to mean, like, they'd be able to move and stop time, because, like, they're, them existing is essentially a catalyst for space-time to exist. So because they have time as part of them, they don't need the universe to provide them with time. That's sort of like the fourth dimension is space without time argument is. So like a fourth dimensional being would have its own space-time, but so yeah, you can be fourth dimensional but different, but still be like equal to your opponent. Now, how you would sort of like perceive your opponent might be a little bit weird, but as far as like strength goes, you should be relative. I think that's important to like an important thing to point out. Now, I'm not saying. Now, I want to really stress this point because some people don't really understand this. When I say the fourth dimension is time, I'm not saying that the first and second dimensions don't have time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the opposite. I brought this up to Striker, but when you have like space, right? Even if it's one dimensional space, it has time because time is just space existing. So technically, if you destroyed a one-dimensional space-time, that would be a two-dimensional feat. Um, which is sort of weird to think about, but like I said, you just have to destroy two dimensions. That it doesn't have to be any two in specific. And if you destroy like a 2D space-time, that's sort of a three-dimensional feat. So yeah, so I'm just saying that. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, I think that's it. Let me see. I think I went through everything. I went through what space is, what time is, why it's linked. Also, one other thing for like why it's linked. The only thing that really warps space or time in our universe are like black holes, and they warp both simultaneously. So the only thing in the universe that we know of that warps either space or time warps them both at the same time. There are no instances at all in the observable universe that we know of space being warped by itself or time being warped by itself. So it sort of makes sense that they're interwoven, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That's sort of like what the fourth dimension is, some requirements for being fourth dimensional. If you want to like debate me on any of this stuff, you can hop in my regular Discord server, and we can debate on it. Because I have two Discord servers. I have my versus debate server for debating versus matchups. Um, but this counts as a more like real life topic. So in my regular server, it's for everything that's not a versus matchup. You can like get in there, play games in the gaming VC. You can drop random images and videos. You can debate on like real life topics like physics, theoretical physics, morality, um, anything that's like philosophy or science. You can debate in that server. So yeah, you can hop in either server to like chill and like listen to people, or you can debate me in either one. If you feel like debating me on a fictional topic, hop in my versus debates. If you want to debate me on a real life topic like this one, maybe think I'm retarded, maybe think I'm a sorry excuse, or wanna be scientist or something, you hop in my regular server, we can debate it out. Although I won't be debating for the next 2 days, so you'll have to hop in the server and debate me in like 2 days. Um, but yeah, also I'm gonna have some goodies in the description, maybe other videos that you might be interested in. So go check out the description for just other random things. Um, yeah, I think that's important. Also, I'm gonna have a link in the description to the source where I got this scan. It's a scientific website. I think it's if you want to do a little bit of more in-depth research, I think it's a decent site. Um, it's www.learner.org. So link in the description because it's a certain page on that website, and I'll give a direct link to take you directly to it in the description. And I'm gonna have now that I think about it, I'll probably have a link in the iCard to a couple of playlists like my dimensional like my how to like power scale playlist and all that good stuff. But yeah, just look in the iCard, look in the description. There's links everywhere, dude. Like just check everywhere. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Join my Discord servers. And Yeah, the Cool Geek out. Bye.